Hey, survival games are kind of weird, right? These games where you get dropped into an empty world with nothing but your fists and maybe a rock, and you have to carve out a place for yourself, where you are given next to no instructions other than survive and maybe kill this guy. Tasks that are either so obvious or so far in the future that they have no bearing on how you are going to spend the vast majority of your time playing the game. When I start a new playthrough of Minecraft, I'm not thinking about how I'm going to kill the Wither as I hit the Stone Age. In Valheim, I couldn't care less about where Yagluth is gonna spawn when I'm designing my treehouse in the swamp, and in Ark, I could spend a week just taming new creatures without ever once thinking about diving into a cave. I love the accomplishment that I feel after beating a boss, after doing what the game wants you to do, but that's never been the why, you know? The why is the hundreds and the thousands of hours between those two moments, between creating a character and beating the game. And that structure of giving the player a start and an end, but no path between, feels so unique to the genre. I don't know that I can think of any other kind of game where so much of it is spent wandering without direction. And that can make survival games feel like a very lonely experience. Unless you're playing with friends, then you very rarely interact with people over the hundreds of hours that you spend inside of these worlds. These games where you play as someone who is definitively human and no one else quite is. And sure, you can hop onto a massive multiplayer server in Ark or Rust, but that tends to be the exception rather than the rule. A much more common scenario is being dropped into a world that feels familiar, but is conspicuously empty. And today, I want to talk about that. That feeling. Why I love games that engender it, and why it's maybe kinda weird. Aside from, I guess, like, MMORPGs, survival games might be the genre of game that demands the largest time sink from their players for a single playthrough. Baldur's Gate 3 is a long game. My first full playthrough came in around 130 hours, but that has literally nothing on a game like Valheim or Ark. These games that you could easily sink double that amount of time into before completing them. And spending that amount of time inside of a game leads to some really strange interactions. You can't fill that amount of time inside of a game with 100% handcrafted experiences. Not in a way that would be satisfying, at least. To scale a game to a certain degree, you have to begin to rely on some kind of randomization. Whether it's in the respawning of NPCs and resources so that the player can continue to play within the same smaller area, or in the generation of terrain and structures throughout the open world, allowing the player to exhaust one area before moving on to the next. Both of these scenarios create subtle patterns within the game that wouldn't be noticeable on a shorter timescale, but when you are 300 hours into a save, when you have seen these same things tens or hundreds of times, it becomes impossible to miss. Things like how every single blacksmith's house looks the same, how Rexes always spawn in pairs, or how every single dungeon has 3 branching corridors. After a certain amount of time, you notice these things, and it creates this odd sensation of simulation. Almost like deja vu. You start to recognize things in places that you've never been before. Places that should be completely unique to you, but in subtle ways aren't. This feeling changes how you view and interact with the world. It starts to feel more like a dream or a playset than a real space. You, the player, are always a few steps ahead of you, the character. When a child is playing with Legos, they might not have consciously planned out an entire storyline before they acted out with their toys. But that doesn't mean that it's happening in real time either. There is that moment between the idea entering their head and their hands carrying it out, where they know what is going to happen, but they still have to make the dolls do it for it to be real. When you begin to recognize patterns in generation, you start to live in that moment between. When I enter this dungeon in Valheim, it is completely new to me. I have never been in this instance of this room. But I know all of its constituent parts. I can look at this wall and know that it is going to be a dead end before I expose it. I can look at this chest and mentally log all of the odds of every item that could appear in it. I can look at the entrance and know for a fact that there are going to be 3 paths branching out, and that I am going to take every single left to ensure that I never miss a room. But then, I still have to do it. This feeling starts to extend to the NPCs who populate the world. It is very rare for games in this genre to have NPCs that are human. At least human in the same way that the player character is. Go watch Folding Ideas, Minecraft, Sandboxes, and Colonialism video for a much more well-researched and fact-based interpretation of all of this, because I'm mostly going to be talking about the vibes and my feelings, which apparently the facts don't care about. Oh, I don't like him. But the way that I see it, there are essentially 3 categories of NPCs that fill these worlds, which I will now organize into an internet-friendly numbered list. Number 1, zombies. Zombies are the classic, hostile, brainless mob that we see tons of in survival games. Like, I mean, the Minecraft zombie super counts, but it isn't quite as tight as that. These are enemies that are 100% hostile to you. If they see you, they will attack, and they will not let up until you are dead. Creatures like this are designed to eliminate any kind of moral ambiguity that you might get from the act of killing them. It'll always be self-defense, because they will always attack you first. These are creatures that you can watch an endless number of spawn. The game frames them more as a force of nature than as any kind of enemy faction. It's just a fact of the world that you need to stem their tide. To use Valheim as an example, we can look at the Grey Dwarves. They're kind of humanoid. They have arms and legs and a head, but they are definitely not human. We see them spring forth from twisted vines and magic, and they don't have any of the behaviors that we would recognize as human. They don't talk to each other or even really hang out in groups. They just aimlessly wander until they find something to attack. The game doesn't want to have to deal with the moral question of you being an outsider arriving in a new land, conquering it, and killing those who are already there. It wants to be able to focus you on the elements of exploration and building. And so, it tries to soften those actions by removing people from the equation entirely. Games like this present you with the fantasy of an empty frontier, a world where you are the only person, and so you can do whatever you want. Number two is what I'm calling goblins. These are characters who are definitely not human, but they're still kind of supposed to be stand-ins for them. I think that the best example that I can use for this comes from RuneScape Dragonwilds. This game is full of goblins, both the literal goblins and these, like, lion-headed guys called Guru. They're both a little more complex than zombies, but are still definitely designed in a way that makes it very easy to dehumanize them. Like zombies, they are definitively hostile. There is no befriending or negotiating or trading with a goblin. But in them, we can still see a lot of the traits that we would say define being human. They have language and societies. We can find and read their journals and their lore. We see them huddled around campfires at night, and they use tools and weapons. In Dragonwilds, we can even see that other humans, like actual human beings who were here before you started the game, did talk to them. We can read about a guy who recruited a couple of goblins to team up with him and try to kill the dragon, but we, the player, are never given that opportunity. Others can treat them as human, but we can't. It feels like games with goblins have the same core want as games with zombies. They want you to be able to explore and fight and build throughout a brand new world while avoiding the moral question that comes along with the people who are already there. But where games with zombies can kind of get away with it by making their enemies not be human, Goblin games can't pull the same excuse. They tried to make their enemies more interesting by making them more human, but then, to justify them just being another enemy, they have to dehumanize them again. They have to turn them into the people who were already there. And to be clear, I don't think that any of this is intentional. I don't think that games with goblins are attempting to secretly make their players be down with colonialism. But I do think that it's interesting to think about. To look at the goals that go into the design of a game and see some of the unintended consequences that can arise from pursuing them. Number 3 is just the Minecraft villager. The implications of Minecraft villagers are really weird, man. I mean, they are so supposed to be people. But the player character is just not the same type of thing as they are. And within the context of the game, that distinction is made to really matter. We can see that they have language, but we can't understand it, and we have no way to try. We can see that they have an economy, but you can only ever participate in it as an external force. We can see that they have a society full of customs and relationships, but there's no way for you to meaningfully integrate with it. Along so many different lines, the game's design deliberately puts up a wall between you, the player, and the NPCs that populate the world. You are forced into this position of being a voyeur, where you are human, and you can see others who seem to be too, but You are over here, and they are over there. Where most survival games dehumanize their enemies, Minecraft starts to dehumanize you. And that is true for all of these types of games. The player is always unique when compared to the other creatures that populate the world, but Minecraft drives it home in a really powerful way. It shows you what you're missing. You are the one who can't understand. You are the one who spawned into this world with no culture. You are the one who is alone. I don't think that any other kind of game creates this dynamic in the same way. This idea of being the only person in the world who is like you. In an RPG, the protagonist is usually special in some way. A chosen one, or someone who is particularly skilled, or someone who even just decides to step up and make a difference. But the world around you is still full of people. People who you can befriend or save or give you a reason to be doing what you are doing. And maybe I'm beating the same drum here, but you don't get that in a survival game. You can't pretend that the things you are doing are for anyone but yourself. You are the only person in the world. You are the only one who can possibly benefit from your actions. And where does that leave you? I don't know if saving the world makes sense if you are the only person in it. It changes it from a selfless act into a selfish one. The Ender Dragon isn't really hurting anybody. He's just doing his own thing. Killing Moder doesn't help the world. It just makes her cry. And defeating the Overseer doesn't affect the arc at all. It just drops you back off in your bed. These games don't end when you win. You keep playing, and because they don't end, because they expect you to continue existing in the world that you have built, winning isn't allowed to fundamentally change that world. And in this genre of game where the draw is the journey and not the destination, would you still want to win if it meant that that journey would end? Would you ever kill the Ender Dragon if it meant deleting your save or completely upending the world as you know it? I don't know if I would. And I don't know if there's another choice. These games are forced to live in limbo, either expanding out impossibly far in all directions or constantly turning themselves over. Worlds where you are forced to be alone so that you have infinite agency to do whatever you want, but where you can't meaningfully change anything. And I love them. And I still don't know if I know why. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I had a blast working on this one. I think it turned out really weird, and I loved getting to just write and think about survival games and why they feel so strange sometimes. They have always been one of my favorite kinds of games, and I'm so happy I got to share my thoughts on them with you. If you enjoyed, then please like and subscribe. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.